Hey y'all, my name is Priscilla and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a Latinx books on my shelf video. So this is a sort of a TBR, sort of a haul. It's a video that I am just going to be talking to you about books that I'm excited about that I actually own on my shelves. Latinx Heritage Month is actually coming to an end, but of course you can read these books any time of the year, and I guess this is sort of a video where I'm going to be real with you and also trying to hold myself accountable and actually getting to some of these books this next year. This video was inspired by a video I saw over on Roxanne's channel called The Novel Sanctuary, where she talked about the fantasy books on her shelves. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the first book is a book that was actually gifted to me by Penguin, and that was like the first time a publisher reached out to me, and I was really excited to get it. So I got Cantoras by Carolina de Robertis. This is a historical fiction novel, and it has 5 queer women. It follows 5 queer women in Uruguay, I believe. This is already where I'm going to be failing about this book. Yes, in Uruguay. And this is an author that I have read other historical fiction by, so I'm really excited to get to this story. It's also been very well received. I know that in particular Perpetual Pages, Adriana, and Lupita over at Lupita Reads on Instagram have been really hyping this book up, and I'm really excited to get to it. Next up, I have The Cuban Affair by Nelson DeMille. This is a Cuban story. That's really all I know about it. This was gifted to me by Yvette a year ago in a video that I still haven't read many books from, so I should probably get to it. I believe this is a story about a Cuban immigrant that is now residing in Florida and is sort of looking back and discussing the Cuban American experience of his life, about the Castro political thing that is happening there. And I think Yvette picked this out mostly for the cover, which is also kind of why I want to read it. It's got some really interesting maps in it, so there's that. And yeah, it's one of those hefty books that's been sitting on my shelves and I've been ignoring. The next thing I have is the collected poems of Octavio Paz from 1957 to 1987. This is a very well-known Mexican poet. I've actually started some of these, and also apparently Nobel laureate. But I've actually started some of these. I haven't worked my way through all of them, and this looks like a much chunkier book than I think it really is, because it's one of those books that has the dual language, the English and Spanish translations, or the Spanish and English translations. I really love his work. He's one of the best known poets from the 20th century in Latin America, most well-renowned, and I should read more of his work more often, but I've dipped in and out of this, but I want to actually finish it. So the next book that I have to talk about is Everyone Knows You Go Home by Natalia Sylvester. This is a Mexican-American author writing about the Mexican-American experience. This book starts on her wedding day, the main character's wedding day, when the ghost of her father shows up, and I think it's a story of redemption and forgiveness, and about how those things, if not resolved, can eat away at the love and connection of a family. And it takes place in a Texas town, so many reasons why I should definitely get to this pretty soon. Next up, I have Lotería, a middle grade novel, I believe, by Mario Alberto Zambrano. And it's a story that I was drawn to, obviously because of the cover, right? Lotería is such a cornerstone to, I think, Mexican culture, to family gatherings, and that's why I really want to read this. I think I was turned off by some of the negative reviews that I actually read on Goodreads, so I really wanted to separate myself from those reviews. I really love this because dispersed throughout, they include stories that have all the different Lotería cards. So that's super unique, super special to me, obviously, and yeah, another book I should read. Next up, I have the Iliac Crest, and this is written by Cristina Rivera Garza. It's a translated work from Spanish to English, translated by Sarah Booker. I believe this is an author that is a Mexican author. I haven't actually read her work, but I've definitely hauled their work in a mini video. And it's supposed to be a very lyrical sort of haunting story. So in this, it says it's a dark, stormy night, and the unnamed narrator is visited by 2 very strange women, and it kind of takes off from there. That's really all I want to know about it. It's the kind of book that I think is more of an experience than a plot-driven kind of book. So yeah, I should definitely read some more of her works, because I definitely slack when it comes to reading translated fiction. So this is one that I should read that's translated. Next up, let's talk about some more poetry. So I got to this book, which I still didn't look up how to pronounce. So there's the title. And it is poems by Marcelo Hernandez Castillo. This is a work of poetry from a Mexican immigrant, and it is stories that are all about the Mexican immigrant experience. And I think in this particularly, this is stories that are about the experience of crossing the border and what it was like before and after that journey. And I read the first poem in this when I bought it at a bookstore in Denver and completely fell in love, but then went on my bookshelf and I never picked it up again. But I think that my heart has felt very heavy with a lot of the stories of immigration lately, especially some revolving Mexicans in Texas and things like that, that have just really made it hard for me to pick this up. But once I have more of a clear head, I definitely want to read this. Next up, I have Pocho by José, and I always have trouble saying that last name. But this is apparently a classic in Mexican literature that I found in a used bookstore. There goes the receipt. And it's a story about a young boy that is called Pocho, which is a derogatory term to refer to, I believe it's Mexican specifically, but it might be Latinx folks that live in the US and that go back to Mexico and are sort of like gringo, like Americanized. So it's kind of an age term. I don't hear it as much really. At least I don't hear it as much here, but that might be my bias living in the United States. And that's why I really wanted to read this. It's about this young boy's life whose parents come from Mexico. It takes place during the Depression era California. Yeah, it just sounds like it's a very influential classic in literature that I should at least give a try one day and read. Next up, I have Dangerous Speech, a social history of blasphemy in colonial Mexico. This is written by Javier Villa-Flores. I've always been interested in history of Mexicans, of Latin America, from that perspective and not from the white perspective, which is the perspective that I've gained mostly through college, through schooling and my education. Definitely a gap in my education that I want to fill on my own time, but that I struggle to fill in my own time because nonfiction history is some of the hardest nonfiction for me to really grasp onto and to really work my way through. Mostly because it's so disheartening, because it's horrible to read about the tragedy that has been inflicted by colonizers on my people. So something that I should read at some point. But so I think that this is really about the Spanish Inquisition and the specific religious overtones and blasphemy that was taught on the indigenous peoples of Mexico. It speaks a lot about the sin and the shame that was perpetuated through language and through missionaries. A really tough, horrifying story about the Catholic Church and the Spanish Inquisition. So something that I should get to at some point. Next up, another history book in that same vein. I have The Broken Spears, which is the Aztec account of the Mexican conquest by Miguel León-Portilla. And this is also edited and I think translated, even though the translators are never put on the front. Oh yeah, translated by Lysander Kemp. Guadalajara, Mexico. Cool. So this is a story that takes the Aztec written work and includes it all together to weave a history of the Spanish Inquisition and conquest of these peoples in Mexico. And again, I think that that history of conquistadors and it's very centered on the white men that actually did all these horrible crimes on indigenous peoples. A lot of that focus and lens of history is from the conquistadors because they are the ones writing the books, and that's the history books that we have today. So this was a book that I was really interested in reading, but haven't found the right headspace to get to. I think that this is going to be a common theme. So I think this is an important book on passing on oral traditions and written traditions, focusing the indigenous peoples in this history. So let's shift gears and talk a little bit about some poetry. I have Virgin by Analicia Sotello. She is a poet from Houston, Texas. So I remember Jacqueline over at 6 Minutes for Me actually spoke about her first, and that's when I went and bought her work. And I don't know exactly what these poems were about. That was really enough for me to pick this up. I'm pretty sure these have a lot of feminist themes, and I hope that it will examine the machismo in that culture and of the importance of self-preservation and not falling into a lot of the stereotypical constraints that are placed on women in Latinx culture. I read the first book poem in this. It was about wedding day and how the traditions are set in that and how those play on virginity and on subjugating women. So I know that I'm gonna like this once I actually pick it up. Next up, I have Tesoro by Jessica Salgado. This is another poetry collection, this time from a Salvadorian American poet. I read the first in this, I think, trilogy of poetries that she is putting out called Corazon. This is the next one in that trilogy, so obviously want to continue on and read the others. Another beautiful cover. The third one is called Hermosa that just recently came out. That one also has a beautiful cover. So once I finish this, I'm gonna be moving on to that naturally. And according to the back, this is a story of family survival and the formative power of the women in Salgado's life. So gotta read this at some point. Okay, we're coming up on the end. Next up, I have Pozo Wells. This is by Gabriela Alemán, and it's translated from the Spanish by Dick Cluster. This is a book that I picked up purely on the recommendation by Rios de la Luz. Rios de la Luz wrote Itza, which was the Latinx-a-thon group book from last year, and doing her Q&A, she recommended this is one of the books that she recommended. It says in the back that this is a somewhat political thriller, somewhat absurdist literary mixture. So this is a story about some women that are disappearing in the midst of a presidential electoral campaign. And one day these officials go to this small town where these people are disappearing, where these women are disappearing, and they are electrocuted. The next person in line for the presidency also disappears. And then a journalist takes up this story and is found in the ravished underworld of the mystery that is involved in all these disappearing people. If this is anything like the style of Itza, it's probably a very lyrical, very atmospheric sort of story, and I'm interested in reading more stories like that, especially if Rios de la Luz is recommending it. Okay, so next up I have my first owned version of Isabel Allende. Isabel Allende is a very well-known Latinx historical fiction writer. She has so many books, and I have The House of the Spirits. All that I know about this is that it is a story that follows 3 generations of a single family through all of the tragedies in that family. And I've read some of Allende's work. I started another story and I can't remember the title of it, but I'll put it here. I love the way she writes historical fiction and I need to read more of it. So I picked up this one because it seems to be a very well-liked one that I will probably want to keep on my shelves after I finish reading it. This is a story that I think is going to be spanning decades, that follows a girl that has a forbidden love story. There's a lot of really high praise for it, so I'm looking forward to diving in. So next up, I have a historical romance. This is the last book in this, and this is called Shame the Stars by Guadalupe Garcia Bacall. This is another book that Yvette gifted me because Yvette is the best sister in the world. And this is a story that follows a Latinx woman in Texas during the Mexican Revolution, I believe. Yes, so it takes place in the early 1900s and it's in a small town in Texas during the Mexican Revolution. So that's all I really know about it. That's all I really need to know about it, but I'm excited to read this one as well. Okay, so that is all that I have to talk about in this video. That's quite a few books. And it's gonna take me some time to work through them all, but I just wanted to share that with you in case I hadn't talked about some of these books and this may be your first time hearing about them. If you saw any books in this video that you are maybe more interested in or were interested in before, please let me know in the comments down below. Would love to hear from you about Latinx books and talk more about them. But that's all I have for this video. So thank you so much for watching and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye!